My name is Pima-Maricopa. I'm a member of the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community here. I am Akimaratam Chalshidam Pipash, or Pima-Maricopa, and Juakam, part Mexican as well. I am a veteran, the 82nd Airborne Division, Desert Shield and Storm veteran. And I will be serving as your MC for this morning's program. As we come together for the 84th anniversary of Remembrance, it is an honor and a privilege to serve as your masters of ceremony. Today we gather to reflect on the events of December 7th, 1941, when the attack on Pearl Harbor forever changed the course of our nation's history. On that fateful morning, 353 Imperial Japanese aircraft, launched from 6 aircraft carriers, carried out a devastating surprise attack on the U.S. Navy base at Pearl Harbor. In a matter of minutes, 188 American aircraft were destroyed, and all 8 battleships in port sustained damage. 4 of them, the California, the West Virginia, the Oklahoma, and the Arizona, were left sinking. The cost in human life and suffering was profound. 1,178 Americans were wounded, and 2,403 Americans lost their lives in the attack. As we reflect on this tremendous loss, we remind ourselves of how the legacy of that day continues to live on through places dedicated to remembrance, one of which stands here within our own community, the USS Arizona Memorial Gardens at Salt River. This memorial is home to 1,606 lighted pillars, each one uniquely placed to represent the exact length and width of the USS Arizona battleship. The taller pillars honor every individual who perished aboard the USS Arizona that morning. The smaller pillars represent those who survived the attack. When illuminated, these pillars create a powerful visual tribute, each beam of light standing for a life forever changed, a story remembered, and a sacrifice that continues to echo across generations. The garden served not only as a place of reflection, but also as a bridge connecting the past to the present. They remind us that every name, every light, and every memory remains part of the enduring story of courage, loss, and resilience that defines the USS Arizona and all who served that day. In 2007, the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community was deeply honored to receive a national flag from survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor at the USS Arizona Memorial. During that moving presentation, the survivors made a heartfelt request that the community raise the flag each year in remembrance of all who gave their lives in service to our country. The Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community has faithfully upheld this request every year since and continues the tradition today. The flag flying above us is the very same one first presented in 2007. It was raised earlier this morning as part of our commemorative observance. As we continue with today's program, we will take part in a special flag-breathing ceremony, offering our continued respect, gratitude, and remembrance of those who served and sacrificed. Each year, we gather to honor the men and women who gave their lives that day and to remember the tragedy and the heroism that emerged from Pearl Harbor. Shortly, the ship's horn will sound. When it is heard, we will observe a moment of silence to remember those who courageously fought and died on December 7th, 1941. Thank you, everyone, for your silence. Attention will now sound, followed by the national anthem and Pledge of Allegiance. We would like to call upon the Luke Air Force Base Color Guard to give us our parade of colors this morning. The national anthem will be performed today by Ms. Isabella Doherty in the anthem language and the Pledge of Allegiance by Girl Scouts Troop 2516.
Time! Colors! Halt! Present! Home!
Namam yoid mam kak dagyok siarek donadik gucham si hasorit donadik hogam hodnyekui svogemas datnum chukshan chakohora babsamams amudak chekyadak vasich sanait man havrak Adas Pima-Maricopa, Fosco Kaida Kokpan, Amtchuk Etchtukamamoich, Manana Keith Vanjud, Sis Haskamen Eviduth, God Siva Hatapatak, Iat Kikdagar. Matagyo Shamhatma.
Right shoulder! Home!
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we would like to have our program participants please come and take their seats. We would also like to have Mr. Tom Largo to come to the stage to give us our benediction this morning, our invocation this morning.
Arriving! Vice President of Salt River Pima-Maricopa Community! Vice President Leonard!
Hey, sir. Tom, glad you made it.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming out for this event today. Okay. Excuse me.
Arriving! Councilmember Doka! Arriving! Councilmember Butler! Arriving! Councilmember Scabby! Arriving! Miss Indian Arizona! Cynthia King! Arriving! Dr. Corey! Arriving! Daryl Brown! Arriving! Army Historian! Thomas Jackson! Arriving! Rick Hartman! Arriving! Robert Flores!
Okay, let's start again. I have the privilege of doing the opening prayer this morning. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out and realizing that what we're acknowledging today is an event that took place against our country and others, and to always remember the one thing that I have found is that this nation will always stand high anywhere because we believe in a holy, mighty, and awesome God. So at this time, this is my prayer for this event. Our God and Father, as we come before you today, we come in a place of humility, in gratitude, in thankfulness, but because we know that you are in control. As long as we will look to you, as all the time that we will cry out to you and ask for mercy, you will give us guidance. You will give us direction. And as long as we will continue to do that, not only as a nation, but a people, but an armed force, Lord, we come before you at this time, and we ask you to be with us at this time. But one thing we must never forget to do is ask for a cleansing of our hearts. Cleanse us, my God, of all unrighteousness. That's one of the first things we must do as we come before you. And then we can seek your presence, that you would be with us at this time, because you are the reason that we have life. You are our King, you are our God, you are our Master, And we ask these in the name of him who gave his life for us and all mankind, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You may be seated. In 2018, the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community became the recipient of the USS Arizona Boathouse Relic, the final piece of an initiative that began in 2014. Our guest speaker today is Dr. John Corey. Dr. Corey served 17 years in the U.S. Army and has been awarded the Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star for Valor, Army Commendation Medal of Valor, Air Medal, Legion of Merit, Meritorious Service Medal, Combat Infantryman Badge, Purple Heart, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, Presidential Distinguished Unit Citation, Ranger Tab, Airborne Badge, and several others, and was inducted into Pittsburgh Dugan Hall of Valor at the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum in 2018. We are truly honored to have him with us this morning. If you would please join me in welcoming Dr. John Corey to the podium.
Good morning, fellow veterans and their families. I thank you for the honor to be designated as your guest speaker for today's ceremony and the opportunity to bring new perspectives regarding December 7th, 1941, the Day of Infamy, and some new reasons Americans fought as they did. It's most appreciated. I also acknowledge the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian community, the Salt River being home to the Otham and Peeposh, the Project Core Committee, Vice President Ricardo Leonard, Robert Flores, Rick Hartman, Thomas Jackson, Jacob Butler, Deanna Scabby, Council Member Cheryl Doka, and Miss Indian Arizona, Sada King. Please take comfort that I am aware of the time limits and I will endeavor not to be a verbal sedative, as well as provide everyone with novel information and new perspective that might be of interest and value. I did notice before the ceremony that I'm scheduled to be here officially for 5 minutes. That was a misprint. So if you had your hopes up that you only had to listen to me for 5 minutes, that's not going to happen. Okay. Anyhow, this is new knowledge to everyone based on personal combat experience, not merely some academic speculation or theory. Although I speak on this venerated day based on my experiences as a university professor as well as combat arms officer, my commentary today applies to everyone, especially all veterans, irrespective of their times in service, assignments, or military organizations. In the past, at several December 7th memorial, remembrance, and commemoration speeches, many speakers have focused on the Japanese actions that were in play exclusively at Pearl Harbor. These speakers addressed specific battles, tactics, and units, or their personal military careers, but never on the troops who were actually in direct combat. Presenters wholly centered on military organizations' victories, losses, politics, and strategies, but not on the individual combatants' battle experiences and their lifelong takeaways. Consequently, I would be lax today in not centering on all the armed forces veterans who endured many attacks, those who became casualties, and those who ultimately rallied to win World War II. On another point, I would be somewhat careless in not citing the additional Japanese attacks beyond those just at Pearl Harbor resulted in many military and civilian casualties and damages. Installations on Ford Island, Wheeler Field, Barbers Point, Hickam Field, Kaneohe, Halawea, Fort Kaminihana, Bellows Field, and several others. It is the veterans, not solely the ships, bases, and aircraft, who deserve center stage. Members of the Navy, Army, Army Air Corps, Marines, and Coast Guard, who were the true lifeblood of our war weapons as represented, for example, by the names of the battleships that were attacked, battle wagons that represented a cross-section of America, the USS Arizona, the USS Nevada, the USS Pennsylvania, the USS Oklahoma, the USS Tennessee, the USS California, the USS Maryland, and the USS Utah, along with dozens of other warships. Of note this day, we can also not overlook the interesting fact that when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, there were 5,000 Native Americans listed in military service. By January 1942, 1 month after Pearl Harbor, the attack, the Department of Defense reported 99% of all eligible Native American men had registered for the draft. Or how about the military nurses at Schofield and Hickam hospitals who immediately began helping the wounded who were carted in, often marking their foreheads with lipstick to help with triage. Further in my presentation today, many Americans and others in this audience will readily recognize and relate to historic warrior ethic and war parties and the revelations I will make about the various reasons and factors veterans so readily engage in and often relish regarding combat. Generally in public, we only hear about veterans when there are some awards bestowed or, more often, somewhat negative mental health or medical conditions are involved. However, today I wish to portray to everyone a larger view, that all of those who served, irrespective of their service, engage and often relish combat. By a show of hands, how many of you have served in our armed forces? Okay. There aren't as many left, but here we are. Why are we veterans of many decades here on December 7th, 2025, as many individuals in attendance today never served in regard to the dynamics I will discuss this morning? Therefore, as I earlier noted, that most speeches center on the actual histories or descriptions of foregoing battles and conflicts, it is more fitting that I will focus on those who served, all of you. What is the unique military bond of camaraderie, the warrior bond that brings us here today? For me as a young lieutenant serving in combat units in Vietnam as I have, Battery G, the 55th Artillery, Quad 50 Machine Gun, 3rd Battalion, 56th Air Defense Artillery, and the 5th Special Forces Recondo School in the Trank could sometimes feel like a regular job. It's a normal, everyday thing, even in combat. It's not until after one leaves such commands, after one leaves the military, in fact, that one realizes it was a privilege to lead and serve alongside such wonderful comrades. It's not until much later in life among the regular people at the office, corporation, or store that you realize how unlikely it is that anyone currently around you would ever grab 3 guys and come running if you were pinned down, wounded, or out of ammo. In the Army, you take those things for granted because everybody does it. They do it. They don't question it. They all don't survive. But such values, courage, and memory stay with you forever and supersede any experiences in civilian life. I'm going to draw your attention to the nature of soldier or the warrior or members of any of our great armed services and the homage we need to pay to such individuals. I earlier pondered, just as I alluded, why do individuals who spend only 2, 3, 4 years or so return for military unions for several decades after their service, but generally will not do so if they have similar employment tours with civilian companies? Who works for General Motors, Exxon, Kroger, or American Airlines for a relatively short time and then 40, 50, 60 years later still bears an affinity for these organizations and the employees with whom they worked? Generally, it's never so, except for those with prior military service. Yes, many say military service was not their most pleasant experience in life, but they truly appreciate not only the knowledge they garnered, but the long-lasting friendships and bonds they created, as well as the tremendous camaraderie they achieved. My having written the introduction to a recently published book based on my combat experiences in Vietnam assigned to the 5th Special Forces Recondo Command and Air Defense units, including a secret mission in Vietnam, Western Pistol, as well as my prior contribution of an individualized chapter more than a decade earlier to previous similar effort for my Bronze Star for Valor in leadership moments, turning points that changed lives and organizations. In authoring some key lessons learned, I thought I had garnered as a result of my wartime experiences in Vietnam. I thought I had exhausted all experiential, rational, pragmatic, after-action insights that I could share in a newer publication. There simply was not much more knowledge I could add to this up-to-date iteration to highlight or reaffirm what had already been published regarding how combat changes individuals, the way they subsequently live their lives, and the evolution of their follow-on behaviors, moral codes, and principles. All combatants, it seemed, developed and embraced a novel set of post-combat attitudes and perspectives unique to themselves. There was no pro forma template to which everyone adhered, although there was, paradoxically, a continuum of generalizations regarding warfare that could only be identified by military personnel dramatically involved in it. More upon reflecting and progressively becoming more knowledgeable of my and others' war actions, and several involving philosophies over many years, I determined there was still more understanding to be extrapolated and gleaned based on the direct and intense combat experiences I had in Vietnam, including insights of brethren who had likewise endured and survived, individuals who were unique privy to the crucible of combat. Excuse me. I needed to ferret these phenomena out with a deeper, perhaps more insightful effort, employing more of a psychological emphasis based on my professional civilian experience and university education. As I purported in the introduction to this new book, Life's Takeaways, for those fortunate or unfortunate few as a result of intense combat, can be positive, excuse me, but negative as well, depending on one's or others' often unsung expectations, unacknowledged perceptions, or unrecognized principles. Excuse me. War forms its own culture. Native Americans can readily relate to this finding. The rush of battle is a potent and often lethal addiction. Excuse me. War is a drug. Thank you. I'm sorry. The rush of battle is a potent and often lethal addiction. War is a drug. Historians, veterans such as many of us are, therapists, combat correspondents, Hollywood filmmakers, novelists, and the state, endowed with qualities that often and clearly, at least to me, possess: excitement, exoticism, power, chances to rise above our small stations in life in a bizarre and fantastic universe that has a grotesque and dark beauty. It dominates our veterans' culture, distorts memory, corrupts language, and affects everything around it, even humor, which becomes preoccupied with the grim perversities of injury, separation, and death. The enduring attraction of war is this: even with its destruction and carnage, it can give us what we long for in life. It can give us purpose, meaning, and a reason for living. Such might be the shared or bonding motive I'm addressing now with other veterans. Only when we are in the midst of conflict does the shallowness and dullness of much of our lives become apparent. Combat and war are enticing elixirs. They give resolve, a cause, and veterans carry it forward until they die. This is, for example, as part of the rationale December 7th embodies such respect and reverence. War makes the world coherent and understandable, because in war, the world is construed as black and white, them and us. Moreover, war creates a bond among combatants, warriors, found almost nowhere else in our lives, a fact I have often mentioned in most of my prior presentations and speeches. War does so because individuals at war are bound by suffering for the pursuit of a higher good. Through combat, we discover that though we may seek happiness, far more important are meaning, cultural heritage, and camaraderie, which are most powerful. In sum, tragically, war is sometimes the most haunting way in human society to achieve meaning and significance, but only to veterans, not to the citizenry. I note a recent mime I recently read stated, "War is only means to teach geography to clueless and uneducated Americans." As background, although I earlier complained about speakers citing personal actions and anecdotes, I must provide a valid basis for my postulations. My first temporary duty was as an Army First Lieutenant in May 1969 with the 5th Special Forces in the Training Republic of Vietnam. The Recondo Command trained elite long-range patrol members from many allied countries, and its tremendously rigorous and comprehensive clandestine battle course was noted as being the deadliest school on earth, as its graduation exercise consisted of 5-man squads going into largely uncontested, dangerous enemy-controlled areas for the prime purposes of securing information and eliminating soldiers of the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. Successful completion of the program with a confirmed enemy KIA earned every special recon soldier a unique permanent identification number. At this point, I referenced the dog soldiers of the Northern and Southern Cheyenne and the Lakota. I was sent by my primary headquarters, the 23rd Infantry Division of Marical, to Special Forces Unit in Nha Trang in anticipation of subsequently being assigned to a secret ground mission on an isolated fire base along the Cambodian border, Operation Western Pistol, which involved Russians, Soviet helicopters, foreign mercenary pilots, and other contingencies and consequences. Another action while on a recon mission, my 5-man long-range patrol encountered headlong a reinforced North Vietnamese Army company of approximately 300 veteran troops. In the Dong Bo Sacred area, an intense running firefight erupted that lasted approximately 2 hours. None of our 5-man squad escaped being wounded, excuse me, and the circumstances had it, on multiple occasions, I ended up charging enemy soldiers, machine gun emplacements, et cetera, waving off air evacuation, dragging wounded troops to safety, destroying NVA soldiers close up, causing secondary explosions, and so on and so forth, and finally getting my patrol extracted from the area. Obviously, none of this was planned on my part. Had we not been killed but captured, our lives would have been very limited, torturous, and worthless, as the NVA and VC had bounties on everyone in our type of unit, especially those wearing Special Forces or Ranger tabs. Although all 5 of us survived, a subsequent but rapid-fire recon revealed dozens of enemy dead. Details of this action were referenced in my Silver Star citation. In addition to what I noted early in the book I referenced, based on my award, the Bronze Star for Valor, as well as the Silver Star noted above, a follow-on award of the DFC Distinguished Flying Cross in discussions with those involved in close combat situations, a virtual continuum, I determined that although such combatants own their own individualized experiences, coupled with both the constructive and undesirable consequences of them, there remain some precepts that are immutable across the board. In my Bronze Star for Valor scenario, I had 2 enlisted soldiers volunteer to remain with me, just the 3 of us, on an isolated strategic hilltop observation post in the middle of a pending large North Vietnamese attack. Well, given the order to abandon the position, both stated to me, "Sir, if you stay, we'll stay." When does such dedication and loyalty in the face of near certain death surface at General Motors or Costco or Chase Bank? I believe such actions and attitudes include, but are not limited to, the following wide range of dynamics. If they do not fully qualify or constitute what would be termed lessons learned, they remain worthy of acknowledgement, acceptance, and awareness in furthering our understanding of war, its impacts on combatants. And they, again, reflect back to Native American culture, values, and ethics. I have 6 observations I'll share with you today, and then I will leave the podium. Number 1, there exists an almost magnetic allure of war for many individuals. Many military personnel relish being in situations where they are challenged and fearful, but they are supremely confident of the outcomes, primarily based on their training and bonding with their compatriots beyond all other considerations. This is the ethos of the warrior mentality, irrespective in which military branch they serve. In Vietnam, they persevered through some of the most brutal conditions ever faced by Americans at war. The suffocating heat, the drenching monsoon rains, an exceptionally well-armed, well-experienced, well-supplied, motivated enemy that could come out of nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Some of the most intense urban combat in history and battles for a single hill that could rage for weeks were common. Of note, the average infantryman in the South Pacific during World War II saw about 40 days of combat in 4 years. However, the average infantryman in Vietnam saw about 240 days of combat in 1 year, thanks to the mobility of the helicopter. 1 out of every 10 Americans who served in Vietnam was a casualty. Let it be said, in such places as the Hanoi Hilton, Vietnam, POWs did not simply endure. They created one of the most extraordinary stories of bravery and integrity in the annals of military history. Conversely, now I see stories and movies of spurious risk-takers who scale mountains and cliffs, take kayaks into whitewater rapids, or shoot fenced-in big game from afar with high-powered rifles, given celebrity status and great rewards. But very little affirmation or recognition afforded to combat troops who face death or disfigurement on a daily basis, born of their commitment to their missions, obligations to their country, and devotion to their comrades. Number 2, soldiers will fight with great honor, unbounded tenacity, and limitless courage, primarily to defend their fellow troops. They afford priority of their lives to their comrades in arms over all their considerations, such as patriotism, fear of the enemy, political ideologies, Mom and Apple Pie, and other similar drivers. History is rife with documented accounts of camaraderie being the mainstay of crucial enemy encounters and pitched battles characterized by individual loyalty and the intimacy of close combat within the brotherhood of military endeavors. In one Army research study on stress and the rate of neuropsychiatric casualties, infantry, special airborne, and Army units, 3 of them, were compared based on their wartime experiences and adjusted for equality of intensity of combat each of these 3 different types of units endured. And for the purposes of the project's validity and credibility, these factors included days in combat, KIA and WI rates, awards of Purple Hearts, Silver Stars, etc. It was found that the troops in armored units suffered the most. Really? In more protected tanks, why would this be so? It was determined that crews in armored units were essentially cut off from the support, camaraderie, and needs of their fellow soldiers. Hence, the higher the combat psychiatric rates in armored units. Moreover, throughout history, it has been documented that most often a unit with high morale, despite being undermanned, tactically at a disadvantage, and under-equipped compared to an enemy with lower morale, will still win the battle. Number 3, a sense of belonging is most powerful. Taking great risks for one's military unit and surviving is uniquely powerful and, even if traumatizing, it internalizes one's thinking, loyalty, and identification on a virtually permanent basis. Consider how many non-military related individuals will work for major business organizations for even a few years and afterward for several decades to come. If not the rest of their lives, will still identify with those business organizations. There are few, if any. The armed services stand alone in garnering virtual lifelong affiliations and allegiances, largely irrespective of the length of contributions of one's military service or the component in which they served. Number 4, enjoying the sting of battle is not irrational. Many combatants miss situations where there are great challenges against other forces, which are incredibly demanding and intense endeavors. It is rooted in our DNA to take risks, and often for men especially, to not learn from dangerous or deadly encounters. Where would we be if our early hunters were injured or their fellow tribesmen were killed hunting dangerous prey? And these early stalkers decided, based on prior lessons learned, they would not go out and do so the next day. Certainly, such is not rooted in our DNA. If such is not rooted in our DNA, lust for challenge and danger while supporting one's comrades can be addictive. All too often, it has been forgotten that our troops in Vietnam won every major campaign in which they fought. They never lost a major battle. Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "There is no hunting like the hunting of man." And those who have hunted men long enough and liked it never care for anything else thereafter. I just mentioned DNA. It's also been documented that chimpanzees will often wait for extended periods in order to seek revenge on fellow chimps that have wronged them earlier. Number 5, sacrifice is paramount. Examine most fraternity hazings, university entrance requirements, and rigorous organization or sports indoctrination rituals, and even their semi-lasting effects. Then virtually metastasize these paradigms into rigors of far more demanding military training, especially for elite combat units, such as Army Rangers, Air Force pararescue jumpers, Navy SEALs, Marine Corps Raiders, and Coast Guard Maritime Security Response Teams, and the elan they ultimately engender. Again, I'm reminded of the dog soldiers as well. Nothing else compares. And in terms of sacrifice, I'd be negligent if I not render a solemn note of the more than 4,000 heroic war dogs that gave their lives or euthanized after their courageous Vietnam service, as our country's politicians thought it best to leave our wonderful war dogs behind, marking a real tragedy and violation of the most basic of trusts between humans and canines. After the war ended, the U.S. military marked its war dogs as expendable surplus equipment, leaving them to the South Vietnamese or euthanizing them. Number 6, one for all and all for one is a supreme driver. Combat troops develop a sense of elan, anger directed toward attackers, enthusiasm for a cause that makes them willing to risk their lives for each other. Pounding hearts, primal fear, and tunnel visions are just a few of the physical and emotional responses that battle troops endure. Upward of 30% of them report fear before going into combat, blowing apart a macho myth that you're not supposed to be ever scared going into battle. The closest of the small group provides combatants with security, the belief that the threat can be overcome, a coping mechanism to deal with the trauma of death and killing, and a sense that their contribution has meaning. On the other hand, psychiatric battle casualties have been the highest among soldiers who did not form close relationship with other members of their small units. It was found that soldiers' senses of obligation to comrades, desire to obtain and retain respect allows them to endure what otherwise would be unbearable. It provides a powerful motivation to fight, the ability to overcome fear, the motivation to carry on. And those of you that know the history of Pearl Harbor and how those soldiers and sailors and airmen fought can understand this. During World War II, the strong bond caused wounded soldiers to go absent without leave from hospitals or replacement centers and return to their squads rather than be separated from their comrades or chance assignments to other units. As a personal note, while I was in Ranger School, we had highly injured Ranger trainees who had been medically evacuated from the field escape their medical facilities only to find ways to return to their Ranger training squads. Again, one for all for one. Although many elements affect a soldier's willingness to suffer, fight, and even die, comradeship at the squad level is the most important element. No matter how good the cohesion at battalion or higher is, without cohesion at the squad level, soldiers will not sustain the will to fight. War is a human endeavor. A fundamentally human clash of wills often fought among populations. It is not a mechanical process that can be controlled precisely or even mostly by machines, statistics, or laws that cover operations in carefully controlled and predictable environments. Fundamentally, all war is about changing human behavior. All told, I do not have the eloquence to round out or exemplify further what I've assumed to be chapter and verse in regard to any lessons learned or takeaways. So embodying my thoughts with Shakespeare's St. Crispin's Day speech, when at Agincourt in France in 1415, Henry V, responding to a French offer to surrender or be totally defeated, emotionally urged his men, who were isolated, surrounded, and vastly outnumbered by the French army with superior weapons, to recall how the English had previously inflicted great deals upon the French. And here's what he said according to Shakespeare. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, while as any speaks, they fought with us on St. Crispin's Day. Of note, almost 6,000 Frenchmen lost their lives during the Battle of Agincourt, while English deaths mounted to just over 400. With odds greater than 3-1, Henry had won one of the greatest victories of military history, largely due to his soldiers' morale and willingness to fight and die for their comrades. For those KIA in Vietnam, World Wars I and II, Korea, Southwest Asia, as well as other wars, none of this has any consequence. For those of us who survived our military service in Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, and elsewhere, much has now largely faded from our collective memories, dissolved into a few sterile facts to be brought out on Veterans Day, periodic lunches and dinners, Pearl Harbor Day, the 4th of July, and Memorial Day. Our combat actions go unfelt and death gurgles go unheard. They often serve as daily reminders of what once was, depending on their enduring impacts seared into individuals' members, as a 5-minute firefight can last forever. War is horrible, but it is nothing like a life and death fight to create the ultimate reality and worth of life. The adrenaline rush is tremendous and it can never be replaced. One only needs to review the myriad of citations for valor awarded to American service personnel because of their heroic actions at Pearl Harbor. Succeeding in combat defines a warrior, places him in a brotherhood where he is always welcome and understood. Often now, instead of sorrow, instead of seeing what human beings can do to one another, we now celebrate with a strange blend of cheery delight and solemn reverence that, in my recollection, are not the emotions of terrified and dying soldiers, soldiers whose names are preserved in granite on the mall and hundreds of locations around the globe. It's often argued that self-sacrifice is a central theme of American civil religion, of patriotism, and that nowhere is that better exemplified than the American passion of the flag of the United States. And we saw that here today. For example, I call attention to a quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower's published account of his induction to West Point. Eisenhower begins by describing the rough first day of initiation at West Point, at the end of which he confesses to being weary and annoyed. Eisenhower writes, however, quote, "Today, toward evening, we assembled outdoors, and with the American flag floating majestically above us, we were sworn in as cadets of the United States Military Academy. It was an impressive ceremony. As I looked up at our national colors and swore my allegiance, I realized humbly that I now belong to the flag. It's a moment I will never forget." I haven't spoken extensively of individuals in actual combat. I must also recognize those vital comrades who made sure the bullets, rations, medical aid, intelligence, transportation, communications, maintenance, and every other means or resources to triumph are recognized as well. Without their services and sacrifices, and their being the long, straight shaft of the arrow, no reasonable means of any victories by American armed forces, the point of the arrow, could ever be expected. Either way, names on granite are not people. Even if they were, stone finally crumbles and slides into the sea. In the end, what soldiers, airmen, sailors, marine, and Coast Guardsmen must share with all others is the anonymous oblivion of Black Hawk Down, Army Rangers at Normandy, the Minutemen at Lexington and Concord Bridge, the ranks at Gettysburg, the sailors at Midway, the Marines at Iwo Jima, and the flyers at the Battle of Britain, the Coast Guardsmen who supported every American military campaign since 1790, and a myriad of other combatants at known and unknown places around the world. No end of duty. Once the uniform goes on, it never comes off, whether it is visible or not. It binds to one's sense of being through hardship, fear, achievement, and pain. And no one who has ever worn the uniform with pride, integrity, and courage can ever sleep through the calls of the war toxins as they wave through one's mind in the deep of night, making sounds of which only dreams are now made. Visions that will be fulfilled only when comrades in arms are joined together again. After even a singular tour of duty or years of career in service, most soldiers, especially those hardened or injured by direct combat, can readily recall the camaraderie alongside the sting of battle that few others are honored to enjoy. A myriad of boundless experiences that create a longing that can never be equaled or fulfilled. Fellowship and unit bonds last forever. They will be part of one's character and soul with every step and breath that remains. A soldier's very being and attitude speak of what he was, and in his heart still is. He envies no one on earth. Succinct descriptors, in closing, of warfare underscore how it differs irrevocably from all other pursuits or callings. General George S. Patton stated, "Compared to war, all other forms of human endeavor shrink to insignificance." General William Tecumseh Sherman affirmed, "War is hell." And General Robert E. Lee declared, "It is good that war is terrible, otherwise men would grow fond of it." And they all had it right. Participating in a Spartan race, taking an academic exam, leading an organization, running a business, all have somewhat acceptable consequences, and even rewards for coming in second place. But military service of any type in combat portend a much higher set of negative outcomes for failure for any reason. This is why we're here on this December 7th morning, the day that marked an era of the greatest generation, by those who gave life to the monuments and memorials we readily recognize and revere today, as a band of warrior brothers. We veterans are a happy few, and I'm prouder to share my company with them than any others. We all should be. Well, here's to us and those like us, and damn few left. Thank you.
As a thank you for being our guest speaker, we have for you a special commemorative gift to take with you. Let's give another hand to Dr. Corey. Continuing with our program, we will always include the breathing of the flag ceremony, followed by a 21-gun salute and the playing of taps. The breathing of the flag ceremony is rooted in the first Pearl Harbor Remembrance event in 2007, when the community received the flag from the survivors of Pearl Harbor. This ceremony honors the promise made to those survivors that the flag would not only be treated with the utmost reverence, but also be displayed at this annual event. During the ceremony, the flag will be presented to the four cardinal directions, east, south, west, and north, as a tribute to all veterans who have served and sacrificed for our country. The breathing of the flag ceremony and 21-gun salute will be led by Ira Hayes, Post 84, from Sacaton, Arizona, on the Gila River Indian community. Playing of taps will be presented by Mr. Ivan Makel And alongside, Miss Jenny Bement. We will now have the laying of our ceremonial wreath conducted by Ira Hayes, post number 84. Please remain standing as we place this wreath in honor, for honor and respect. Thank you. Also, as a part of our flag breathing ceremony, was the San Carlos Apache Veterans Association. We would like to thank them for being a part of that for our program this morning. For our closing remarks, we would like to call up a member of what we call the Core Committee, Mr. Thomas Jackson. You may be seated. After which, at the conclusion of Thomas's remarks, we will have our benediction given by ordained minister of the Covenant Christian Church, Mr. Darrell Brown.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Jackson. I'm a retired curator of this community. I proudly served this community for 20 years. And I was very fortunate to be a part of this project of the USS Arizona. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of it. I want to thank each and every one of these veterans who've came this morning and shared with us. It means a lot. But this morning, the Vice President actually asked me to tell a little bit about what is not known to the general public about USS Arizona. The Arizona was the biggest ship that was ever built in 1917. She was the biggest warship in the world. She was also fuel. So every bit of her was state-of-the-art. It was actually christened with 2 champagne bottles because of the prohibition. The governor decided to take water from one of our lakes and have it christened with those bottles. So that's just one of the things that was very interesting to me. If you see this, the design, it is the actual size of the Arizona itself. We actually found the original blueprint, and you'll see it when you go inside. And we took that blueprint and laid it down. And this is how wide and how big the Arizona actually is. The circles you see out there in the middle are the turrets, 3 and 4. If you don't know, that is where our brothers are lying. They're lying at rest at the real Arizona. But this is just representing of that. On the morning of December 7th, I'll take it back. We're going to go Friday. USS Vessel pulls up alongside the Arizona. She's a maintenance ship. She's going to upgrade the Arizona. And, for the following Monday. So anyhow, I lost my train of thought. The Vestal, as we know, is a part of history, and that's the Donald Stratton story. But come the after its upgrades, the following week, she was starting to be loaded with ammunition, and a lot of other crew. They were going to be going back stateside. So at the end of the week, the Arizona was headed back stateside to add armor, and the hull scraped. And I stopped and thought about that for a long while. If the attack didn't happen, those boys would have been home for Christmas. And it touched me really deep. But I remember reading a report, an officer, he had been on Pearl for a long time, and he was so happy to get back home. He was the first one on that ship. Boy, I can't wait to get back home. It's been too long out here. And he had his gear already packed, and the only bad thing he had to do is he was made to sleep out in the hall because there was no room. So he had to sleep out in the hallways of the officers' quarters. So if you don't know how bad those quarters are, the hallways are, there's not much room to pass through. So his bunk was always getting hit by somebody going by. So these are just some things I remember. I've read the entire report, the damage reports and stuff like that. And yes, as our guest speaker has mentioned, there's a lot of information. I think in one report required one of the officers, they couldn't find the captain or the rear admiral. And I think it was the damage control officer. He told one of the crew members to go find them. They ran all the way down to the bunks, and there was no lights. It was all smoke and fire. And they felt down in his bed, sir, are you here? They couldn't find him. So they ran up all the way up to the battle damage, or the battle bridge, looking for him. And they found the captain up there, and he told the captain, he goes, sir, you're supposed to be in the conning tower. I've been told to find you, but you're supposed to be up the conning tower right now. And the captain turned around, he goes, no, son, I need to be here helping helping the boys. And he's on the phone trying to get those engines started. He's trying to get that ship to back out. And then, just then, the blast hit. It shook. And if you see up here how badly it shook, you'll see Tower 1 tilted. And that young man was the only one that survived that. He came all the way down the ladders, and they were red hot. He had to jump almost a story and a half down to the main deck and then complete his report. That's how much these boys back then, how much they really, they were above and beyond the call of duty that day. It was said on the Arizona, those machine guns, they didn't stop. They didn't stop until the last plane left. And they were pretty badly shot up. If you don't know that and I just recently learned this through a bunch of historians. When the ship blew up, she rose up. Of course, that's thousands of tons raising up. And when it came back down, a 10-foot wall of water came and hit Ford Island. And you see that in the original, the original footage. It just looked like little waves coming down. No, they're 10 feet. So these are the things that, some of the things that I remember. When we built this, I was here for most of it. And I was very honored to know that veterans were building this. In fact, they were so emotionally with it. You see these windows? These windows were a different design. And those veterans came up and said, you know something? We would like to do something for it, this building. Why don't we make them like the ship's windows? And they fashioned those windows themselves. The brown copper design up here. I remember the lead person, he goes, we've got to take them down. They're not right. It's not right. It doesn't represent the Arizona. And he wanted to replace them, and that was done. The color wasn't right. And lastly, what I want to say, you see this platform out here? That is what the original platform looked like. A little shrunken down. The plaque on the rail is from Admiral Radford and his statements, word for word. If you have time, go read them. They're really deep. But the first memorial Admiral Radford built was actually a wooden platform, and underneath the platform was where the boathouse was. Now, the boathouse, many of you are probably wondering, where is it located? Underneath the second tower. The second tower is where they rose the flag every day. That is exactly where it is. On the tail, fantail, that is where the state's flag flew. But you'll see in pictures that the American flag is flying off the fan tail. there's a story of that. Immediately after the attack, search and rescue teams were called. And one man found the flag, the American flag. It was sitting there floating in water. And he grabbed that flag and he put it up on the fantail of the Arizona. It flew for days. It smoked and almost being burnt itself, but she flew. And it was meant in the face of the enemy, this flag's not going to fall. So the young man who did that years ago, because he wasn't supposed to do that, his orders were search and rescue. He was so scared, even today, he goes, I don't want to tell anybody. Don't say my name, because, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be search and rescue. So only few people really know his name, but it was quite of an honor for that. So I'll leave you with a couple of new insights on the Arizona. But yes, she was a grand lady. And when you enter the ship, go and see the boathouse and enjoy. Thank you.
Pearl Harbor Day Prayer 2025. The day after the attack, President Roosevelt said, "With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God. But always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us." To honor President Roosevelt's invocation of God the day after the attack, let us be the always part of our whole nation, remembering by uniting in heartfelt prayer. Prayer. Our God, Father who is in heaven, your name is sacred to us. Please allow our hearts to turn in memory of what happened 84 years ago in Pearl Harbor. We honor you, God, and those who have gone before, in tipping the flag in the four sacred directions. In this breathing the very breath of life you provide. Please help our hearts turn in the direction you would have. Indeed, Father, you have said about this land, to the degree you keep my commandments, you'll prosper in the land. But to the degree you don't keep my commandments, you'll be shut out from my presence. Father, we unite this day to remember what happened 84 years ago by turning to you in humility. Let us keep your commandments that we will prosper in the land you have provided. We pray in memory of those who died in Pearl Harbor, those who sacrificed, those who remembered, those who have gone on in courage. Please, God, allow our nation to unite this day in memory of the fallen. Please allow our hearts to turn to you, God. In your name we pray. Please help me close this prayer together by saying, Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you for attending today's ceremony, and we express deep gratitude to the following individuals and groups. Ira Hayes Post, number 84. Girl Scout Troop, number 2516 from Salt River, Dr. John Corey. Tom Largo, Mr. Ivan Makel and Jenny Bennett. Priest, Mr. Darrell Brown. Salt River Fields at Talking Stick. Salt River Public Works, Administration and IT Departments. Project Core Committee members, SRPMIC Vice President Ricardo Leonard, Robert Flores, Rick Hartman, Thomas Jackson, the late Joel Jefferson, the late Robert Numkina, the late Charlie Donahue, the late Nick Alvarez, and the late Darrell Hills. We also would like to thank Miss Indian Arizona, Ciarda King, who is in attendance with us, representing the 22 different tribal nations of Arizona. We'd also like to thank Discover Arizona, Luke Air Force Base Color Guard, the San Carlos Apache Veterans Association, Mr. Kevin Ridington, and Mr. Alvin Velez. We recognize and appreciate the Salt River Community Council, who are, some of them are here with us, but all give their continuing support to this important event. This will conclude our ceremony this morning. Please come and visit the relic, which is now open for viewing, and always come back and return, bring family and friends, and share the story of your visit with us here this morning. Thank you.